Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. Did you know that over 11 million tons of textile end up in US landfills each year? These discarded garments release an estimated 176,000 metric tons of microplastic fibers into the environment annually. And the fashion industry's reliance on synthetic materials has skyrocketed, with polyester now used in over 60% of the garments. Fast fashion brands are increasingly using cheaper plastic-based fabrics to produce more clothing at lower cost. And this trend towards disposable fashion is not only harming our planet, but also potentially impacting our health. Microplastic from these garments can enter our food chain, water, and water supply with unknown long-term consequences. This is why we're so glad to be chatting on IG Live today with Hannah Dunning, CEO of the Clean Media Agency. Hannah is the host of Hannah Dunning Projects. During this live, we're going to discuss the first steps to take for creating a low-tox closet, what to consider when buying undergarments, common materials to avoid in clothing, and so much more. I saw. Here you are. Hello. Hi, Hannah.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. I know I'm on the opposite end of the world, as I'm sure most people here are. So it's morning for me.
It is morning for me too.
Oh, really?
It's 11 o'clock my time.
Oh,
I'm on Pacific time.
there we go. All right. Well, then hopefully you're enjoying a cup of coffee like me.
Oh my God. It's right
They're
here.
much needed.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Oh, so happy to be here. I get really excited when we have any group of people wanting to talk about plastic in clothing and specifically what we can do to be better. It's my jam.
It's huge. I think we talk a lot about personal care product and stuff, but I feel like there's people are aware much more when it comes to personal care than clothing. Clothing is just like a whole wild west
Right.
that a lot of people just have no awareness on this topic.
True. Yep, totally true.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you decided to become an advocate for clean living.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a series of, we'll say, compounding events. A lot of things happened that gave me pause over my life in terms of primarily health and how I was feeling. I would say a catalyst for me personally was I experienced infertility issues. And I think a lot of people who go on health journeys, and frankly, almost all of the people that I talk to who go on health journeys, it typically starts with being sick. And no one wants to be sick. No one wants to feel sick. And typically, just the way we are as humans is if we're feeling good, then we're gonna just continue to do what we're doing, for better or for worse. And so it definitely took some serious events for me to, really heavily consider what I was putting in and ultimately on my body as well. And that's essentially what led me here. I also live in Lahaina, on Maui. And as most people know, we had crazy fires that destroyed our whole town. And
Yeah.
a lot of that, almost all of it, had to do with environmental neglect. So, sort of add all of those things together, for me, that's really what put me on the fast path to wanting to not only understand my health and feel better, but then also understand the health of the environment and just exactly what kind of role I could play in making sure that disasters like that didn't happen again.
That's really well said. Why do you think it's so challenging for people to purchase cleaner products?
Mm. Because what does clean mean,
Mm.
right? It's so we have all of these companies racing, literally racing to come up with the next new chemical compound that we as human beings have literally never discovered before. And they'll name it something and then they'll put it in their product and get it out to market. And we, as at least in the United States, having the FDA can't keep up at all. It's just impossible. So I think there's a multitude of things going on here, but I think ultimately when it comes to the consumer, and I was in Target this weekend, right? And I don't even like going to Target anymore, which is wild. That's how you really know I've changed because, several years ago, Target would be my ideal weekend venture. But I'm in Target and I'm looking for some body wash, and I'm pretty deep in the health world, and I literally was looking around like I have no idea what is in this stuff. And you turn it around and it's all these crazy chemical names, and it's really confusing. So to answer your question, I think it's just really hard because there are so many new things on the market, especially when it comes to chemicals. It's nearly impossible to keep up and really understand what you're putting on your body. So I would say that, in addition to not enough regulation with a lot of things, especially clothing. And that's why I'm so passionate about clothing, because we're getting more regulation in cosmetics and beauty and even food. It's not perfect and a far cry from perfect, but it's getting some attention. Clothing, we have no one single regulatory agency. We don't have an FDA for clothing or an EPA for clothing. There's nothing of the sorts. So all of that to say, I think it's just really confusing out there. It's really hard to be a consumer today.
We hear a lot about greenwashing in the personal care product industry. Could you share like some things you've learned about the clothing industry? I bet that's like even more wild.
How far do you want me to go here? Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's important to understand why greenwashing happens. It's actually not a bad thing as to why it happens. If you're seeing greenwashing happening, it's actually a pretty good indicator that there's positive movement in the consumer's demand, right? Because if companies are scrambling to understand how to increase their shareholders' value in a company, they're going to do whatever it takes to understand the consumer. And so, what these big companies, especially, are understanding is that the consumer wants to help their health. They want to help the environment. These are important things, especially with the new generations. And so, they're scrambling to do the next thing to call themselves sustainable or green or clean. And so, let's just acknowledge what that is. It's not necessarily a bad thing that they're wanting to look a certain way. The problem is that that's not actually true, or they're not actually impacting things for the better. It becomes an issue, of course. In the clothing world, I hesitate. There's so many different aspects of greenwashing going on in the clothing world right now. And I certainly don't want to overwhelm anyone, because I think ultimately the most important thing for consumers is to change their own mindset and to slow down, do the research, to really understand when somebody slaps the word sustainable on their website or on their Instagram page, what does that actually mean? Don't be afraid to ask questions. How is that sustainable in the long run? Especially when it comes to plastic, I always encourage people to ask them, how is plastic sustainable? Just please explain, right? So in the clothing world, again, I could go a whole bunch of different ways, but I think ultimately my biggest pet peeve when it comes to greenwashing is calling any plastic sustainable.
That is so true because think now part of the greenwashing is you see a lot of garments are made of recycled plastic. Like everything is recycled plastic, and then people think it's very sustainable and it's like really good for your health and it's like better than virgin plastic. But like oftentimes when it comes to health, the recycled stuff is actually a lot worse.
It is a lot worse. And let's not get it twisted either. Nobody loves recycled plastic more than the people making plastic. So I think we often like to think, oh, recycled plastic is, we're going and collecting water bottles in the ocean and using it. And sometimes that does happen. But more often than not, I don't know the exact statistic. It's a crazy one, and I don't want to misspeak on this live, but most of all of the recycled plastic is just coming from the same manufacturers making regular polyester. It's just another way for them to make money. And it's quite a genius marketing ploy for them and companies who just want to continue making plastic things, but want the consumer to think they're doing better.
Yeah. What are some like common materials that we should look for on clothing labels so that we know what to avoid?
Oh man, what to avoid? Anything with poly in it. So, and that actually that goes beyond clothing too. Anytime I see poly anything, I'm gonna take pause if it's in any product like cosmetic or what have you. But for clothing specifically, my number one recommendation to avoid is going to be polyester.
Mhm.
The reason being is it's one of the most volatile plastics out there, meaning there's a ton of reactions that can happen in it. There's thousands of chemicals. I like to paint a picture sometime. If you see you're at the park with your kid and there's a plastic slide, logically, you could look at that plastic slide and say to turn that into a shirt that we're wearing would take a lot of work and likely chemicals, right, to make it stretchy and comfortable. And so polyester is going to be my number one avoid recommendation. Number two would be neck and neck with polyester, which would be acrylic.
Mhm.
Acrylic is really sneaky because when you're feeling fabric or you're in a store, acrylic looks like any other sweater. Like even maybe it was a cotton or wool sweater, but it's acrylic. It's important to read the label because acrylic breaks down incredibly easily. So what that means is when you wash it, when you dry it, and in my opinion, even when you wear it in certain conditions, those microplastics can end up in your bloodstream and certainly in the water. So acrylic would be another recommendation to totally avoid. My next would be nylon, spandex, elastane, um, all of those really stretchy things probably you don't want to put on your body. And I think it's interesting because we talk a lot about how we shouldn't be drinking a plastic water bottle that's been sitting in the car or sitting in the sun. You can test that water and you'll see billions of microplastics, or now we're finding nanoplastics, which you actually need um, a laser. You need a laser to see those nanoplastics. So, point being, if you're heating up a water bottle in the sun from plastic, you are the water bottle. If you are wearing plastic on your body in the sun, working out, right, prolonged exposure to heat, it's not a good combination. So, my reading tags can be tricky, especially because a lot of companies aren't totally forthcoming actually with the actual materials used. There's a whole lot that goes on behind the scenes there. So my advice is if it's super stretchy and like buttery soft, I recommend hesitating, learning more about the company and their processes.
So what are some materials that people should be looking for then? The
Yeah,
opposite.
Yeah, there's this huge movement going on right now. It's this like ancestral wellness movement where we're basically trying to live the way that our grandparents and the people before them did. And that's what I recommend with clothing. So if it was around, with your great 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 grandma, that's probably something you want to wear. Um, my number one favorite is linen. It's just a personal preference. I think linen is incredible. It has some amazing capabilities, including being antimicrobial. There's a reason hospitals use linen bedding for as long as we have written records of there being hospitals. My second recommendation is going to be organic cotton. I love organic cotton. I love the history of organic cotton. It's actually a fairly recent offering in the fabric marketplace. Of course, cotton's history goes far beyond, but organic cotton is fairly new in the grand scheme of things, and it's an incredible alternative to cotton. Cotton is considered the world's dirtiest crop. It takes an insane amount of pesticides and herbicides, insecticides to keep that cotton plant clean and alive. And so when you're wearing even a regular cotton shirt, you're wearing something full of pesticides. It becomes part of the fabric. You can't just wash it out. So organic cotton is the best of both worlds. You have that nice breathable material that we love in cotton, well, without the pesticides and insecticides and herbicides. So organic cotton. Also wool. Love wool. Wool is incredible because you can wear it in warm weather. You can wear it in cold weather. It's moisture wicking, again, antimicrobial, an awesome alternative to any plastics. And I think my last recommendation would be hemp. And hemp has a little bit of a bad rap, maybe from the marijuana industry, but also I think because historically speaking, if somebody is wearing hemp clothing, it almost looked like a burlap sack. Um, and there's been lots of innovation recently and lots of amazing companies coming out with really cool hemp clothing. And hemp is incredible in pretty much all the ways. It requires hardly any spraying. It is not a huge water user. and it is super regenerative. It grows very, very quickly. So I would highly recommend hemp, especially from an environmental standpoint. Even cotton takes a lot of water.
Mhm.
Hemp does not. It's amazing. And then we do have some materials like tensile lyocell, which is a fairly new material coming from Lenzing in Austria. And this is a prime example of what we can do with technology. We can take things like eucalyptus trees, and we can use technology to turn it into a nice stretchy fabric that really highly resembles a synthetic, but is non-toxic and is in a closed loop process, so it's not being dumped into our water. So that would be my other recommendation. That's a lot. I see a question here. Somebody asked about llama clothing. Alpaca's great. I love it. It really comes down to personal preference, and it really comes down to who you're buying it from. Of course, anytime animals are involved, especially, you want to make sure to ask the right questions from the person harvesting the wool. In my experience, most of the companies using alpaca wool in the United States and Canada and Australia and Europe and other places, I would just highly recommend asking the right questions and taking your time with purchases to understand how they are producing it and how they are harvesting it.
Mhm. You had an excellent post about creating a low tox closet. The first tip you recommend is to start with undergarment. Why is that?
Oh, definitely. Well, it's closest to you, right? And especially as women, I can't believe we don't talk more about what's in our bras. It's actually one of the things that blows my mind the most, considering our breasts are literally made to swap information back and forth with the baby. So what that means is we have glands that are literally created to take things in. And our breasts are a location with some of the most estrogen receptors in our entire body, and they are actively searching for estrogen. And the unfortunate thing is phthalates, which are in almost all of our conventional bras, have or mimic estrogen. So it's fake estrogen essentially. And so our breasts will actually connect, those estrogen receptors will connect with that fake estrogen and hold on to it. And that is what can cause serious health issues. And so our bras, and that's not even considering the dyes in our bras, the azo dyes. My number one recommendation for breastfeeding mothers is to not wear a black maternity bra. Black is one of the most toxic colors in the dyeing process. It requires a ton of different chemicals, and if you're putting that on your breast, especially when breastfeeding, we've actually found these things in breast milk. We have found these things in placentas and unborn babies. So it is a serious issue, and frankly, one that deserves far more airtime. But yes, going back to your question, which was the underwear and the bras, that's the reason why you should really pay attention to the bras. And then the underwear is fairly self-explanatory too, because it's a direct pathway to our body. So it really boggles my mind when people, and I get a lot of people every day. I have a DM box full of it right now of people saying microplastics can't make it through your skin.
Mm.
Now, science disagrees. And on top of that, especially in your underwear, okay, it's, let's do the math here, right? That's a huge issue with leggings too. A lot of women do not wear underwear, and then they'll put on their Lululemon leggings, and then they'll work out in them. So it's really kind of the perfect storm, or it can be when you're wearing them every day for 15 plus years, right?
Mhm.
So, practically speaking, most of us can't go out today and just buy an entire new wardrobe, nor should you from a sustainability standpoint. Um, so my recommendation for starting with bras and underwear is a health recommendation. It's also just a practical recommendation of put a barrier between yourself and your polyester shirt if you're still wearing polyester. Those are little practical ways to just put an extra layer between you and that toxic plastic.
You even had your husband make these changes. How did he respond to your advice at first? And, how did you get him on board?
So my husband is born and raised a Texan. He played football his whole life. He played D1 football at a college, and he's basically the opposite person who would ever care about their wardrobe really. And I mean, I'm being judgmental, but I'm just speaking from personal experience. It's been really fun to watch him learn with me, and the more that he's learned, I have my cat here, sorry.
Oh,
The more that he's learned about the the why and the science,
mhm.
the more on board he's gotten. But let me tell you, if you're trying to talk a man in general into making better choices, start with their underwear and tell them about testosterone because plastic underwear should be nowhere near any of our reproductive systems, including men. And there's been tons of scientific studies on this, and that's a really easy place to start with them. There's also lots of great underwear companies out there making non-toxic men's underwear. And if you can find a comfortable pair of boxers or briefs, typically the conversation gets easier from there in terms of swapping things out.
That's a great tip. Now, going back to the bras, do you have any recommendations for non-toxic bras?
Yeah, I'm always really careful to recommend companies as a whole because it's not that there aren't amazing companies out there. It's just that a lot of companies still have plastic in a lot of their items, even if they have one bra that's, 100% organic cotton with a little bit of spandex or whatever. So I always recommend, just as a good practice, to look at each piece of clothing individually rather than a company.
Yeah.
I think there are some companies doing incredible stuff that I trust through and through. But again, as a good practice,
Mhm.
don't just, take a company saying they're sustainable or even plastic free and just assume it's all good. Read each item and the material in that item. That said, some of my personal favorites to look into are going to be Discritcher. That is a small owned female run business out of Texas. They have my favorite cami. I'm actually wearing it right now. So I really like this scripture. Oops. Thanks, my cat. Turned off my light. Um, and I think there are some other great alternatives for camis. Now, let me be clear about something that we really need a lot of work done in, which is a regular functional bra with padding. It
Mhm.
is almost impossible
Impossible.
to find, yeah, a plastic-free padded
Yep.
bra or even just a bra with a
Yep.
cup. And I find that really, really unfortunate because I have younger sisters I have two sisters who are still in high school. And it's so hard to try to talk them into ditching
Mhm. Mhm.
the Victoria's Secret or
Yep.
whatever because they don't want to wear some, frumpy
Yes.
thing somewhere. Now, Discritcher, to be clear, is not frumpy, but it is a cami
If it,
type bra, right? Bralette. It's not the cup. So lots of work needs to be done. I believe Third Love has a cupped bra, but again, that's an example of Third Love makes a lot of stuff with plastic.
exactly.
Um, so there is a bra that they provide. It's just be careful with looking into it. So I wish I had a better answer, but ultimately it's great to have conversations like this because we actually need more options, especially for women.
I also feel that's the same thing with active wear. What
Mhm.
should people consider when purchasing active wear?
You know, I've gone on this huge journey of recommending, the next best activewear company.
Hmm.
And honestly, I keep coming back to the concept of I think it's okay. This is going to sound weird, but it's okay to feel a little uncomfortable. And what I mean is we've been so, I don't want to say spoiled because it's not been a good thing, but like a
Hmm.
pair of Lululemon Align leggings feel amazing. There's a
Hmm.
reason why we literally live in them, most of us. Um, and frankly, today, as of right now, I have yet to try a pair of natural leggings that are just as good.
Yes.
But if you look at the science, right, and you understand what's in those things and what happens when you're working out and sweating and, getting hot in these things, for me, I made the personal decision to wear organic cotton when I'm working out. And does it feel as good as a Lululemon Align legging? Not at first, but then once you start
You get used to it.
understanding exactly what's in it, you're actually psychologically, you feel way better because now that you know about what's in your leggings, it doesn't actually feel good to work out in them anymore because you're constantly thinking about what's happening. So all of that to say, yes, there are several companies doing really cool things. I think on the innovation front, Namarie is doing really cool things. It's spelled N-A Marie is kind of how you can think of that phonetically. They're doing some really cool things. I can't remember if they're the ones doing castor beans. I don't know, but it's primarily plant-based. And then Active, Aktiiv, they're doing really cool things too with castor beans. Those are kind of the two that are really trying to be super innovative with new materials. And then you have places like Pact or Made the Label, and they're doing more of like the cotton aspect. There's still going to be at least 3% spandex in them, just to give at least a little bit of stretch, but way better than 90+%. So that's I would, I guess, encourage people, don't be afraid of working out in cotton. Like organic cotton, give it a whirl, especially if you're experiencing infertility problems or eczema or health issues, and you're really committed to wanting to feel better and be better overall. Try it out. I don't know, get a little uncomfortable at first. See how you feel later.
I so agree. I recently tried wool leggings,
Oh, yep.
icebreaker, and it definitely does not work as well as the typical, polyester, but I totally agree, as you mentioned, that, the feeling of it, you get used to it, and then the feeling of not getting all these microplastic exposure is
Right.
so much better.
Yeah, it really comes down to your priorities. And at the very least, what I say is we at least deserve to know, right? Regardless of if you choose to continue working out in your Nike or your Adidas or Lululemon or whatever, you deserve to know what's in them. And I think that is where the American people, and not just the American people, of course, globally, everyone is being failed because we're just unaware of what's in our clothes. There will always be people wanting to continue wearing the traditional leggings, and that's okay, but they should know.
Hmm. We got a couple questions.
Let's
What
see.
do you think about combed cotton?
So combed cotton is simply a method of um, I'm gonna say weaving or spinning cotton. Combed cotton, it would be depending on, is it organic? Is it regular cotton? Um, Again, regular cotton, you could argue is better than plastic, and I would probably agree. Like, for example, when I started transitioning my wardrobe away from synthetics, I kept my regular cotton. That's because I don't like the plasticizers and the phthalates in traditional plastic or in all plastic. Now, organic cotton, like I said earlier, is a far better option when it comes to not being sprayed by a whole bunch of kinds of chemicals. And frankly, it's not just about your health either, it's about the environment. And organic practices, especially in the United States with USDA organic certification, that's a soil thing, and we need our soil to be free of harmful things. And it's the same reason why you can buy organic cotton um, tampons. And if you send them to the lab, they will come back with trace amounts of lead and arsenic because it's in our soil. So, as a global movement, we are in desperate need of organic practices, regenerative practices, and things to bring health back to our soil so that future generations aren't going to be in trouble with the amounts of minerals and toxins and poison, frankly, left in our soil. So, all of that to say, organic cotton doesn't necessarily have to be combed, it just depends. But organic cotton is absolutely the way to go. It's a little bit more expensive, sometimes a lot more expensive, always worth it.
What are some other tips you have for shopping and for maintaining the clothes that you buy?
Well, if you go to my Instagram page, I really encourage not shopping first, which is really counterintuitive. I deeply believe that we buy way too much. We buy way too much. We are in big trouble because of how much every single one of us buy, and I am so guilty of that. Um, Previously, historically. And so I think first and foremost, buy less and buy better. If it's expensive, um, it sh so we have to be careful because a lot of stuff is expensive for no reason. Like go to athletic wear store right now and they're gonna sell you plastic for 100 plus, right? So Do your research, slow down, ask a lot of questions. Any business who you want to support with your dollar should be able to answer your questions. If they're too busy to answer your questions, don't buy from them because there's a small business owner who needs more sales anyways and who's doing all the right things and would answer your questions probably pretty thoroughly. So don't be afraid to ask. If they come back with vague answers, don't buy from them. Um, be really, really clear. And of course, you can't have boots on the ground with every place you shop from, but ask the right questions. Don't be afraid. There are no dumb questions. There are no silly questions when it comes to ethical practices and your health. I would also say, um, in terms of slowing down, if you're thinking of buying something, think on it for a while. Put it in your cart and sit for a week. And then if you're still thinking about it, still don't buy it. And then keep thinking about it, right? And I promise if you can do that, it feels really good. And in fact, even just this weekend, I told you I was at Target and I didn't even like being in there. I didn't want to buy anything. It didn't feel good. That's because that's not where my gratification comes from anymore. You really have to retrain your brain and your dopamine on where to find joy. And we've been trained since birth to find joy from packages arriving at our door or clicks or deliveries. And if you stop that, it's just like being an addict, right? If you stop drinking the alcohol, if you're an alcoholic and give yourself time, it's always still hard. I'm not saying I don't see things that I want sometimes, but you learn to redirect and find joy in other areas. Now, in terms of tips for how to keep things nice, number one is have a tailor on speed dial. I have a close friend who tailors for me, which I'm lucky, but tailors are amazing and totally underrated and almost a bit of a dying art from our parents and their parents' generation because we just throw things out. But a good tailor is a real game changer, even if you fluctuate in size. Like I had two kids, and after having kids, I don't look the same, and my body shape is not the same. So, but I don't have to get rid of all my clothes. I go to my tailor, I extend things, let things out. Sometimes we hem things. It's the same thing as maybe learning how to sew. So when my kids rip a hole in their jeans, you can patch it up, right? The second thing would be wash less. The United States of America in particular washes more than any other country in the world has ever washed. We have this thing where if it comes off our body, it's straight into the washer. We don't need to be that way. It is so wasteful on so many levels. It's expensive. Ultimately, spot cleaning and spot treating is a way better alternative. And air drying. You guys wearing putting your clothes out in the sun, there's nothing like it. It's amazing to get stains out if you have babies or kids. You have reusable diapers or a shirt or a onesie, throw it in the sun. Spot clean it, or if you have to wash it, and then throw it in the sun. It's amazing. So, yeah, those are probably spot treatment, put it in the sun, wash less. Oh, here's a fun little tip that I learned from, I believe Amy Powney, but put your jeans or your sweaters in the freezer. Yeah, I never knew about any of this, but it's a thing. Instead of washing your jeans, they say technically you should almost never wash your jeans. There's really no need. Jeans actually, over time, as they get more worn, look better, right? Levi's used to spend insane amounts of time and money on making their jeans look worn. And in fact, you used to technically, you were supposed to wear your jeans for over a year before they started breaking in when you had Levi's. But yeah, so the freezer, look into the freezer for sweaters, especially wool, cashmere, and jeans. Hot tip.
Super interesting. This is awesome. I know we're a little bit over, but I have one more question.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Oh,
You've
absolutely.
started your podcast called the Hannah Dunning Project. So what do you cover on the show? Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, the name, I felt silly naming it that, but ultimately it was like I didn't want to paint us into a corner with any one specific topic. I didn't want it to just be about clothes because it's all related. It's all correlated. It's how we treat our bodies is how we treat the planet and vice versa. And there's so many topics woven throughout both of those concepts of body and planet. And so my podcast is a whole bunch of different things, but ultimately it's dedicated to just being better, right? And That could be, I interviewed Dana Thomas last night, who, here, I'll show you. She wrote this book, Fashionopolis. And if anyone has not read this book, this is arguably the most important book I've ever read. And that is really an aggressive statement, but I stand by it. I think that this should be taught in schools, and it should be a required read, Fashionopolis. So I interviewed Dana Thomas last night, and then today we went live with an episode with Dr. Noah Leibowitz, who talks about parasites and fungal infections. So we're really all over the board, but ultimately it is dedicated to our health and the environment's health. And again, hopefully I don't sound like a broken record, but they're so correlated. It is so correlated. And I think the health thing with clothing is really important because it's right up front. Like if you have skin issues or fertility issues or chronic fatigue or what have you, you're going to take a deep look into your practices in your life. And it's really easy in today's world, especially when you're working in a corporate office and then driving home in your car and then going into the garage and closing the garage, and you're not outside. Sometimes climate change and how we treat the environment isn't upfront and close until it is. And I think it's a really actually interesting concept that our health is here. We all live in our bodies. If something's wrong, we know it and we have to address it. And in turn, because of that, ultimately we are helping the environment too, because if you're not wearing plastic because you don't want it on your body, then you're not buying plastic and it doesn't end up in our water systems. So it's all super correlated. Long way to answer your question is the podcast is all about all of that kind of stuff. Maybe the name will change. I'm not sure. I named it the Hannah Dunning Project just because it's really a journey of me learning from these amazing people, and I'm literally just documenting it.
I love it. I love it. I love the name, and so don't change it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much for what you do and then being on the show and providing all these great tips. I think all the audiences and the future audiences will learn so much from this. And then please, everyone, check out Hannah's podcast because I think there's so much more to learn from the podcast as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you for what you guys are doing. I think it's incredibly important that we have conversations like this as much as we possibly can. Again, to leave everyone, I would say, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, whatever they look like, whatever they sound like. Everyone's so scared to send the DM. It's so silly. Don't be scared. Shoot your favorite brand or a new brand a DM and ask the hard questions. Ultimately, that will help those brands too, because if they don't have good answers, then hopefully it will inspire them to consider the question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye.